BA Honours Psychology. Paper is Psychological Research, PSY 05. So, hello, how are you, my dear students? I am sure you must be fine, enjoying your studies. Today, we will talk about method, a very important method, that is experimental method. Because in research, the papers you are in psychological research, as the nomenclature, the name indicates, you will have to conduct the research. When you conduct the research, you must have certain tools with you, with which you will collect the data. Now, there may be so many tools we will talk about. So, one of the important method, a scientific method, very important method, is experimental method. So, today we will talk about experimental method. As a curiosity, just for your knowledge, you must be knowing that the first experimental lab in psychology was established by William Wundt at Leipzig in Germany in 1889. So, Wundt was the person who established first psychological lab where the experiments were done. Now, let us start experimental method. In conducting a research in psychology, various methods are used. Now, when I say various methods are used, one of the methods is observation, another method is interview, another method is your questionnaire, another important, very important method is psychological testing. There may be rating scale, there may be case study, there may be sociometry given by Moreno, etc., etc. So, there are various methods to study the human behavior, to do the research on the behavior, but one of the important method is experimental method. It is very important. Why important? You will just know. Now, first let us see what is an experiment. Whom it will be called experiment? An experiment is observation under controlled conditions. In an experiment, broadly three kinds of variable emerge: independent variable, dependent variable, and extraneous variable. Now, a variable is that observation where you have controlled on the conditions. If you have no control on the condition, then it is simply observation, not an experiment. Suppose I am a student of psychology, I want to study the behavior that when you are hungry, how you behave. Now, I go to a restaurant to study that how the people who are coming for the dinner, the lunch, how they are behaving. A gentleman comes in the hotel, I am sitting there. Now, he orders for a dosa or any item. He is in very hurry. He has ordered that bring this vegetable, this vegetable, salad and chapati, etc. I have observed that he has taken only 2 chapatis and the eating speed was very fast. It appeared he is in very hurry. Now, why he is eating fast? Why he took only 2 chapatis? I have no control on the conditions. Maybe he may be in hurry. He may have to catch the bus or the train. He may have taken a heavy breakfast. Now, that is why he has taken only chapati. The food may not be tasty. Now, he will reach to his destination, the village or from where he is coming in the late night. So, he is saying, let us have something so that when I reach to the home, I may not feel hungry. I have no control on the conditions. Now, it is not an experiment, it is simply observation. Now, suppose I am giving a very simple example by which you can understand the meaning of an experiment. Now, I say I have chosen 5 students in a class. I said, well, the class starts at 9 to 2, but these 5 students, they will come at 8:30 without taking breakfast from their home. So, 5 students whom I have selected, they came at 8:30. I have given them the breakfast. I have given them 250 gram sweets, 1 fruit, 1 apple and 1 glass of cold coffee. All have assumed 250 gram sweets, 1 apple and a glass of mug of cold coffee. Then I start teaching at 9 and up to 2 they were not permitted to go out. Now, when at 2 my class is then I invite them for the lunch. Now see, I have controlled on the amount of breakfast to all. Breakfast is equal. I have control on the hunger hours. I started at 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. All 5 students are hungry from last 5 hours. All are getting the same meals in the lunch which I have served. So I have control on the hours of hunger. I have control on the amount and the type of the breakfast. I have control on the type of the meals which I have served them. So if I am conducting research under the controlled condition, it will become experiment. Though the example which I have given is not rigorous experiment, but just to make the concept clear, I have given you this example. Whenever you conduct the experiment, 3 variables will emerge: independent variable, dependent variable and extraneous variable. Now, what is independent variable? The variable which we can increase or decrease, that is independent variable. What is dependent variable? The variable means vary, V-A-R-Y, changeable. The fact which the behavior or which is affected by that change is dependent, which depends on that is dependent variable. Extraneous variable: extra, additional, newest, numerous additional variables which may affect the dependent variable is called as the extraneous variable. For example, I want to study the effect of the noise or learning. I can decrease or the volume of the noise, that is independent, which I am manipulating. What I want to measure? Your study, your concentration, that is dependent. Your concentration will be affected by the noise, no doubt about it. Now, are there other factors which may affect your concentration? Your interest, your age, difficulty of the topic, your motivation, physical environment, your psychological state, your IQ, what not. These all variables are called as the extraneous variables. So, when you conduct the experiment, 3 types of the variables will emerge: independent, dependent and extraneous variables. The purpose of an experiment is to study the functional relationship between independent and dependent variable. Now, when I say functional relation, what do you mean by functional relation? That means how independent is affecting the dependent. I am teaching you, my teaching method is independent. I can change my teaching method according to the demand of the students. Now, what type of the method I am using, that will affect your understanding. So, the purpose is study the relationship of my method and your understanding, but relevant extraneous variable emerge in an experimental situation and affects the dependent variable. So, I will just explain it. So, dependent variables will be affected by both independent and extraneous variable. These extraneous variables need to be controlled so that a researcher may study the effect of only independent variable. Now, extraneous variables. Now, broadly speaking, extraneous variable can be classified in 2 categories: relevant and irrelevant. Irrelevant means those conditions which are present in the environment but are not affecting the dependent variable, that is irrelevant. Relevant extraneous variables are those which are present in the environment and affecting the dependent variable, that will become the relevant. For example, you want to study the effect of teaching methodology on the understanding of the students. Now, teaching methodology is independent. The teacher can change the teaching method, I have told you, and that have effect on your understanding, your getting the marks or your concentration. Now, the color on the walls, whether the walls have the white color or the yellow color, will not affect you. But the color is a variable, it is irrelevant. But suppose when I am teaching you, there is a noise outside. If there is a noise outside, that will affect your concentration, your understanding, that is relevant. Clear? The color, size of the pencil, if you are to draw, is relevant. If you are not to draw, you are simply it is irrelevant. So, extraneous variables are irrelevant as well as the relevant. Irrelevant, you just ignore them, but when you have the extraneous variables which are relevant, you must taken care of, because if the relevant variables affect the dependent variable, then dependent variable will be affected by two factors, independent plus extraneous variable. Whereas the very first line, the purpose of an experiment is to study the functional relationship between independent and dependent. So, these extraneous variables need to be controlled. Unless and until you don't control, it will not be experiment, it will become quasi method, quasi experimental method, because in quasi the variables cannot, extraneous variables cannot be controlled. Now, what are the techniques by which we can control the extraneous variables? What are the methods by which we can control? One is elimination, the second is constancy of condition, the third is counterbalancing, and fourth is randomization. Now, before coming to these methods, because that point will emerge, relevant extraneous variables may be classified in three categories. One is situational. Such a relevant extraneous variable which just emerged suddenly in the situation. We are conducting experiment, suddenly a noise emerges, weather changes, there is a thunderstorm, there is a rain, that may disturb the subject, that may disturb the environment, that is situational. Subject relevant. Subject relevant means which are the characteristics of the person who is serving as a subject in experiment. For example, what is the effect of my teaching on understanding? Your IQ is subject, your age is subject relevant, sex male female is subject relevant, clear? Those which are related with the subject is called as the subject relevant. And third is sequence relevant. Sequence means 1, 2. Sequence relevant means when a subject is that in psychology on whom we are doing the research sample. If a subject is used in more than one condition, two condition or three conditions, first condition, second condition, then it is called sequence relevant variable. So, situational which emerge in the situation, subject which are related with the characteristic of the subject, sequence when a subject is repeated in more than one condition. So, now let us start in this. What are the four methods? The first is elimination. Elimination means just get rid of, remove. The most desirable way to control the extraneous variable is to eliminate them from experimental situation. Examples may be soundproof room to eliminate the effect of the noise. Pavlov in his experiment on classical conditioning took a soundproof room to eliminate any outside sound. For example, sound emerges suddenly in the environment. Thunderstorm, your university, your department is near the airport. Suddenly a plane lands or takes off. The voice, disturbs you. Now, my teaching method is independent, but that noise may divert your attention. So, that has become relevant extraneous variable. So, to eliminate that sound, what I may do? I may make my classroom soundproof. Studio is soundproof, so that other sounds from the outside may not enter in the classroom. I have used the method elimination. Now, the technology has changed. Now, you are taking photos, films on your mobiles, on the cameras, no reel. Earlier, just remember, when there were studios, when they used to develop the reel, there were dark rooms, so that the reel may be affected by the light. So, they have taken that dark room to eliminate the light. This is the elimination. When Pavlov conducted the study on the classical conditioning on a dog, established that study, when it will come I will explain you. He took a soundproof room because he was trying to study the effect of the relationship between sound and the bell on the food. Now, suppose I am ringing a bell, the dog is salivating, a sudden other voice come. Now, whether my dog has learned to salivate on my bell, sound of my bell, or on the sound coming from the outside, clear? So, he has taken a soundproof room to eliminate. The first condition is called as the elimination. Most of the extraneous variables cannot be eliminated. Now, there are certain extraneous variables which is not possible to eliminate. For example, I said method of teaching on understanding. Now, method of teaching is independent, I can change the method, understanding is dependent. Now, your age is extraneous, can I eliminate the age? Your attitude, your interest is extraneous, can I eliminate the interest or the attitude? I can't eliminate. I have given here example, for example, the experimenter is interested to study the effect of vitamin A on the ability to read letters, that is eyesight. Here the light will be extraneous variable, but it is not possible to eliminate light. Likewise, other extraneous variable like age, IQ, motivation, previous experience, etc. cannot be eliminated. I want to study the effect of the vitamin A on your reading ability. I can I can manipulate vitamin A. To one I am giving only 1 tablet, to other I am giving 2 tablets per day, to other I am giving 3 tablets per day. I can changing, but the light will be there, whether 1 tube light is there or the 2 is there. I can't eliminate your past experience, I can't eliminate your motivation, I can't eliminate. So, there are certain conditions which cannot be eliminated, but one of the method is to eliminate is the elimination, because if some method has a defect, that is why the other method will emerge. Now, second method is constancy of condition. When certain extraneous variables cannot be eliminated, as I have given you the example, we can attempt to hold them constant throughout the experiment. Control by this condition means essentially that whatever the extraneous variable is there, the same value of it is present for all the subjects, So, you see, when certain extraneous variables cannot be eliminated, then the second technique can be used is the constancy of conditions. As I just told you, constancy means whatever the effect has, that effect will be equal for all, not for one subject, it will be equal for all. For example, I have given example, the time of the day is an important extraneous variable. Maybe the people perform better on the dependent variable early in the morning than late in the afternoon. In order to hold time of the day constant, we might introduce all subjects into experimental situation at approximately the same hours on succession days. Now, for example, you are to conduct the experiment for 2, 3, 4 days. Now, today you are conducting experiment in the morning at 10, tomorrow in the noon 2, and day after tomorrow late in the evening. Now, will this timing may not affect the subject, may not affect the person who is on whom you are conducting the study. In the morning he may be fresh, in the evening he may be exhausted. Now, if you are doing on one in the morning and to other person in the evening, then this time factor will affect. So, in constancy, I will conduct my experiment on the same time whosoever comes for that. If we have conducted experiment on the at 10 a.m. So, all the subjects will be tested at 10 a.m. maybe on the different days. So, time will be constant, So, whatever the effect is freshness, that is equal for all. I will explain you another example also. In the case of effect of vitamin A on reading ability, we may keep size of the letters, distance, light constant for all the subjects. Now, what is the effect of vitamin A on your eyesight? Now, vitamin A, I can change the dose 1, 2, 3 tablets independent. Your eyesight will be affected on vitamin A or not, I will study in the research. Now, when you will study the eyesight, the letters which you are to study will become extraneous variable. If I am writing very small letter for one person and big letters for the other person, will it not affect the eyesight? Now, the big letters you are able to read. Now, is it because of the vitamin A or because of the size of the letter? Now, you see the chart on whom you are studying is here, and one person is standing at the distance of 2 feet, other standing at the 3 feet, other 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet. Will this distance not affect your reading ability? It will have. So, it is relevant extraneous variable. Now, I will keep this distance constant. I have fixed 3 feet. So, whomsoever is coming for the study, I will ask him to read the letters at 3 feet. So, this distance is constant. The only one tube light is there. So, light is constant. The size of the letter I am not changing. So, it is constant. The second method is called as the constancy of the condition. I explained you in the example of the vitamin A at the time of the experimentation, noon, afternoon or the morning. Thus, many extraneous variables like instruments, instructions, IQ, experience, etc. may be constant for all the subjects throughout the experiments. Now, you are to study, I have explained each and every word, you are to study 10 persons, effect of the teaching method on understanding. Now, you have taken 10 students in the class, one with the IQ 110, one with the IQ of 140, one with the IQ of 90. Now, will this IQ not affect their understanding? Now, whether that understanding is because of the IQ or my teaching method is difficult to understand. So, what I will take? I will take all the 10 students whose IQ is 110. So, if all the students with IQ of 110 is in the class, now IQ is constant. I have taken all those students who have 1 year experience in the university, your experience is constant. I have taken teacher, that teacher will teach section A, section B, section C. Now, the teacher is constant. You have tested your subjects on one instrument, because even the instrument may have different impact on the behavior. So, keep instrument constant for all the persons. So, in this way we can use the constancy of the condition. The third technique is balancing. When it is not convenient or possible to hold conditions constant in experiment, the experimenter may resort to the technique of balancing out the effect of extraneous variable. There are two general situations in which balancing may be used. Now, there may be condition where even constancy is not possible. If constancy is not possible, elimination is not possible, then you can opt this technique, and this technique is called as the balancing. Now, what are the conditions of the balancing? Number one, where the researcher is either unable or uninterested in identifying the extraneous variable. If you are not interested in identifying the extraneous variable, what I have to do? I will use this method and the extraneous variable will be controlled. Or either you are unable, you are not in a position, you are not able to guess that which extraneous variable may emerge, or you are not interested, you may adopt this technique balancing. Where he can, he means researcher, where he can identify them but desire to take a special steps to control them. You have identified that x1, x2, x3, x4 extraneous variable are there. You want to take some special method to control them. So, in these two conditions, we may have the opt for the balancing. Balancing may be applied where there is more than one experimenter. In this case, we can merely need to have each experimenter run an equal number of subjects in each group. Now, you may be in hurry, you have the time shortage. So, instead of one experimenter, one researcher, you are using the two researcher. Now, if you are using the two researcher, constancy is finished. No constancy, because their personality may affect the respondent. Now, what you can do? You can use the technique balancing. How? Half first researcher, half the second, half the first. So, I will told you with example. So, in this way, it will be affected. Now, let us consider a situation. I have made a table for you. Now, let us consider a situation which is bit more complicated. Simply two researcher, 30 subjects, 15 one, 15 other. Now, the remaining 15 to the second and 15 to the first, it is simple condition. Now, let us take a little bit complicated situation in which researcher wishes to balance two effects, not one, two, sex and experimenter. We have 60 subjects per group, two sexes, male and the female, and two experimenters. Now, two experimenters are to study 60 subjects, male and the female. So, now there are two variables, extraneous variable, sex, male and female, and the experimenter. In such condition, balancing arrangement will be as. Now, I have illustrated you, try to see. Illustration of a design where experimenter and sex are balanced. group 1, group 2. Now, what I do in group 1, 15 males, experimenter 1. First experimenter will work on the 15 males. 15 male, second experimenter. 15 females, first experimenter, and 15 female, second experimenter. Now, group B, 15 males, first experimenter, 15 male, second experimenter, 15 female, first, and 15 female experimenter. In this way, we can do the balancing. Now, you may say, when I say two group, what do I mean? Now, when you conduct the research, you may have two group, experimenter and control group. Experimenter group is that group where you are introducing the independent variable, and control group is that group where you are not introducing the independent variable. For example, what is the effect of vitamin A on reading ability? The group whom I am giving the vitamin A will be group 1 experimenter, and the second group where I am not giving vitamin A is control, that is group 2. So, it is group 1 experimenter, it is group 2, the control group. So, 15 into 460, 15 into 460. Now, what you do? You know, in this way control balance the conditions. Now, the fourth method is called as the counter balancing. It is one of the very important method, and I just told you that extraneous variables are I told you subject relevant, situational, and sequence. Sequence I told you just few minutes back, when the same subjects are used in more than one condition. Now, counterbalancing technique will be used in condition where the same subject is used in more than one condition. Now, let us see what is this method. Some experiments designed in such a way that the same subject or group of subjects must serve under two or more different conditions. Just I told you, when the same subject is serving under two or more than two different conditions, it is called sequence relevant extraneous variables. Suppose an experimenter is interested in whether a stop light should be painted yellow or red. On the road, when we have to put a stop point, there is a red light, and then there is a yellow or the green light. Now, I want to study whether at the stop point, the signal should be yellow or the red. His problem would be on which light reaction time of the subject is shorter. Now, which of the light has a shorter reaction time? Reaction time is time to react, time to respond. Now, whether at red light you put your brakes, or at yellow or the green light you put your brakes more quickly, reaction time. I want to make this comparison. Now, to answer whether reaction time is less on red or the yellow, to answer this question, he means the researcher, might measure a subject's reaction time on first yellow light and then to the red light. Now, you will have to make a comparison of the same person. Only there and then you can know that which light which has the shorter reaction time. So, suppose you first present yellow light. Now, I am putting you yellow light, switch, press this button. Now, how much time you are taking to press this button? I will note in the machine, yellow, 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 then red, red, red. So, it is condition, but repeating the procedure with a number of times, he could reach a conclusion. Perhaps the reaction time to the red light is smaller. Since the subject were first exposed to the yellow, however, their reaction time to the sign would be partially dependent upon their learning to operate the apparatus and adapted to the situation they are exposed to red light. Hence, their lower reaction time to the red light might merely reflect practice and as adaptation rather than the effect of the color. Now, in this color, sign and practice will be confounded. Now, what I have told you, just try to understand. I put you first red light and yellow light. Your reaction time to the red light is lesser in comparison to the yellow light. Now, is it because of the red light, or is it because you are fresh at red light, but at the time of yellow light you are exhausted? you are exhausted. Now, if you are exhausted, it may be the effect of the fatigue. If it is the effect of the fatigue, yellow light may take, reaction time may be more. Now, it is not because of the color of the signs, because it is because of your fatigue. Now, on red light, you took more time. In yellow light, you took, if I am presenting red light first, yellow light later on red light, your reaction time is less, and on the yellow light, your reaction time is, your red light or more and yellow light is less. Now, when you are working on the first time on the instrument, you are not aware, you are not acquainted to the instrument, so that is why it took more. Now, when you came for the second time on the yellow light, you are acquainted with, you have adopted to the lab situation. So, the positive effect or the negative effect may fatigue. If you are visiting any classroom, you are visiting laboratory for the first time, you are not adopted to the situation, you are looking here and there, one instrument is there, the second is there, there are charts, the teacher is entering. But if you are working in that laboratory 2, 3, 4 times, you know, that effect, you know, will be adaptation. So, in this case, whether it is adaptation or exhaustion, it is because of fatigue, what I will do, I will do the counterbalancing. You see, experimental session, half subjects yellow light first, half light red light first, half light red light first, half subjects yellow light first. Now, if the reaction time of the red light in the first and the second is less, whether you are presenting first or the second, then I can say the reaction time of the red light is lesser than the yellow light. So, the application of this method would be to have red light half the subject to the yellow light first and red light second, while the other half would be experienced red light first and the yellow light second. It can be presented like this. So, counterbalancing to control the sequence relevant variable may be done by this method. Now, I think it is clear. So, half red light first, half the subject, half yellow light second, half yellow light first, on the half yellow light later on. Now, if in the both the reaction time of yellow light is higher than the red light, either first or the second, we will say that red light has low reaction time. So, the effect is counterbalanced. So, the general principle of this technique may be stated. What the general principle? Each condition, color or the sign must be presented to each subject an equal number of times, and each condition must occur on equal number of times at each practice session. Each condition will be presented on equal number, and you know the session that will be equal. Furthermore, each condition must precede and follow all other conditions on equal number of times. If 5 trials of the red light first, then half trials yellow light second, then 5 trials yellow light first, half trial red light second. So, this is the condition of the counterbalancing. Remember, counterbalancing is used mainly when you are to use the same subjects in more than 2 conditions. So, this was your counterbalancing. Now, another condition is called as the randomization. Now, this technique is useful for 2 general situations. Number 1, where it is known that certain extraneous variables operate, but it is not feasible to apply one of the above techniques. You know that certain extraneous variables are coming. You know that people with different IQs are coming. It is not possible to keep it constant because of certain conditions. We have the limited sample. I can't keep the constant. I have only 2 instruments, 1 instrument. I can't keep the instrument constant. Only 1 instrument. I will have to work on that instrument. I can't keep that constant. Only 1 teacher. I can't keep him constant. So, if there are certain conditions where it is not feasible to, it is known that it will operate, but we can't control by the above condition. Number 2, where we know that certain extraneous variables may operate, but cannot specify them and therefore cannot apply the above techniques. You know that these variables will come, but it is not possible to specify them, then this randomization technique may be used. In randomization, the effect of extraneous variable is randomized out. That is, whatever their effects, that they influence both the groups approximately up to the same extent. So, variables like motivation, experience, more problems, etc. can be controlled by these techniques. I have two groups, experimental and control. Now, I will allot subjects randomly. I will just make the slips and pick. Now, roll number 1, experimental group. Roll number 5, go to the second group. Roll number 10, first group. Roll number 11, this group. Now, if I am randomizing out that, then my biases will not operate. My biases will not come. So, if it is not possible to apply any above of the techniques, above means elimination, balancing, counterbalancing, and the elimination, then you can use the randomization. Or if you are not there is not possible to specify, to filtrate that which variable may operate, opt for the randomization. Now, I tell you, McGuigan in his book Experimental Psychology, he says when you conduct the experiment, you do the experimental method. In that condition, first identify what are the extraneous variable which will emerge. Identify, make the list. If you don't identify, then they will affect the dependent variable, and my purpose is only to study the effect of independent on dependent, not the effect of extraneous. Those variables which are irrelevant extraneous, ignore, let them go, need not to bother. Size of the color is not important, table color is not important, but the height is important. If the height is too high, you are short stature, then it may affect. Those which are irrelevant, ignore and continue the experiment. Those which are relevant, apply the above technique, elimination, constancy, counterbalancing, whatever the thing I have told you, and randomization. Now, he says, suppose if randomization is also not possible, situation is such, we can't do randomization, he say, abandon the experiment, don't do it. Stop the research. There is no use to conducting the research if the randomization is not possible. That means if the 4 techniques are failed, the last method we can attack is randomization, and if randomization is not possible, stop it. No need to do the experiment. If you do the experiment, the results will not be correct, will not be precise, because dependent variable will be affected by independent plus the extraneous variable. So, in today's lecture, we have tried to understand what is an experiment, what are the variables which operate in the experimental condition, independent, dependent, extraneous, how to control the extraneous variable, what are the techniques, and in which condition which method is to apply, we have talked about. And if these techniques are not possible, none of the above 5 techniques is possible, then don't do it. It will become field experiment. It may be the field study, the quasi-experimental method. Experimental method will only, it will be experimental when these conditions are applied. So, this was all about the experimental method. Thank you very much.